Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going exploring the world of inherited family trauma. You've brought us It Didn't Start With You
hmm
by Mark Wolin. And I have to admit, just the idea that, what my ancestors went through could be affecting me today is
Yeah.
kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's a pretty thought-provoking idea,
Yeah.
and Willen does a good job, I think, of making a case for it. And what's so interesting is he actually starts the book with his own story
Hmm.
about his personal journey of healing. He lost his vision for 3 years, and doctors were baffled. They couldn't figure out why,
Right.
and they couldn't give him a cure.
So basically, he went on like a global quest for answers then.
Yeah, he did. He explores everything from meditation and fasting to alternative healing methods. He even consults gurus in Indonesia.
Yeah.
There's this one anecdote where a guru asks him, "Who do you think you are not to have eye problems?" Which really
Oh,
challenged Willen to like, kind of accept his condition.
that's a good question. It is interesting, though, that he went all over the place. Do you think that was maybe a way to avoid like the real issue, that maybe the answer wasn't out there in the world, but more kind of buried in his family history?
That's an interesting thought. And ultimately, Woolen's journey did lead him back to his family. His vision did eventually return, even though his ophthalmologist said it wasn't possible. And I think that's what really solidified his belief in that mind-body connection and the power of the unconscious.
Okay, so how does he then connect his healing to this idea of inherited family trauma?
So basically, through his own experience, he came to believe that his vision loss may have stemmed from some unresolved trauma in his family's past. And this led him to explore how emotional pain from previous generations can be passed down. And it can show up in our lives as physical symptoms, phobias, anxieties, and even relationship patterns.
So you're telling me that my great-grandmother's anxiety could be the reason why I have trouble sleeping?
It sounds far-fetched, I know, but there is science behind it. The book talks about epigenetics, which basically means that traumatic experiences can leave a mark on our genes, almost like a hidden code that's passed down. So trauma can impact not just our memories, but also our very biology.
That's so interesting. But with this epigenetic stuff, doesn't that make us all just prisoners of our past?
Not necessarily. The book actually highlights that inherited trauma can be a source of both vulnerability and resilience. It's like inheriting a double-edged sword. Dr. Rachel Yehuda, who's a leading PTSD researcher, points out that while inherited trauma might make us more susceptible to certain challenges, it can also give us the strength to overcome them.
So it's not a life sentence. It's more like a blueprint
Eh?
that we can learn to read and rewrite.
Exactly. And the book is full of real-life examples that illustrate this concept. You might be surprised to learn how directly these unconscious connections can impact people. Take Jesse, for instance. He couldn't shake this insomnia, and he had this crippling fear of falling asleep. Turns out his uncle froze to death at the exact same age Jesse was when his insomnia began.
Wow, are you serious? That's incredible. I never would have considered that.
It's a powerful example of how these things can resurface. And through visualizations and acknowledging his inherited trauma, Jesse was able to get a good night's sleep. Then there's Todd. He was a young boy who showed really aggressive behavior. His grandfather had a history of violence, actually including killing a man. It was a family secret that had ripple effects for generations. When Todd's father finally acknowledged this inherited pattern, Todd's behavior miraculously improved.
Wow, that's pretty intense. So is there a way to figure out what we might have inherited? Like what's lurking in our own family history?
That's where this idea of core language comes in. It's a key concept in the book. It's almost like a code to unlocking secrets of your family history. Wolin breaks it down into 4 steps: core complaint, core descriptors, core sentence, and core trauma.
Okay, so let's break down this core language thing. What exactly are these core sentences, and how do we even find them?
So your core sentence is basically the phrase that sums up your deepest fear. It's like a window into your subconscious, revealing the underlying trauma that might be driving your behaviors and patterns.
Okay, so how do I figure out what my core sentence is? This is kind of freaking me out a little bit, thinking about what could be in my subconscious.
Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. Wellen provides a really clear framework for identifying your core language. He suggests starting with your core complaint. What's the one thing you struggle with most in your life? It could be anything: relationship issues, health problems, feeling stuck in your career.
So for me, it might be this constant feeling of not being good enough, like I'm always striving for something and never quite reaching it.
That's a perfect starting point. So the next step is identifying your core descriptors. These are the words you use to describe your parents. And Woolen believes that the way we see our parents can tell us a lot about our own unresolved issues.
Interesting. So say I describe my mom as overprotective and my dad as emotionally distant. What does that tell me?
Those descriptors can provide clues about the emotional climate you grew up in. The book calls this the family atmosphere. It's like the emotional DNA you inherited from your family. So an overprotective mother might create this feeling of being stifled or not trusted to make your own decisions. And an emotionally distant father could lead to a longing for connection or even a fear of intimacy.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So how do we then get from those descriptors
Hmm.
to my core sentence?
By connecting the dots. Think about how your core complaint might be linked to that emotional legacy that you inherited from your parents. In your case, this feeling of not being good enough might stem from your mother's overprotective nature, which could have inadvertently sent the message that you weren't capable of handling things on your own. And your father's emotional distance might have reinforced this belief that you weren't worthy of love or attention.
Wow, that's heavy. So is my core sentence something like, I'm not worthy of love, or I'll never be good enough?
Yeah, exactly. Those are powerful statements that could be at the root of your feelings of inadequacy. And once you identify your core sentence, you can start to explore your family history to see if there are any events or patterns that might have contributed to this belief.
It's like detective work
Uh,
to try and understand our present.
exactly. The book provides some really specific questions that can help you connect your core sentence to potential events in your family history. For example, if your core sentence is, I'll be abandoned, you might ask, who in my family was abandoned? Or was there a story of someone leaving the family abruptly?
It's amazing to think that something that happened generations ago could still be affecting us today. It's kind of unsettling.
Yeah, it just highlights how these unspoken or even forgotten narratives within our families might hold the key to understanding our deepest fears and anxieties. And it's not always about finding a specific event. Sometimes it's about understanding the overall emotional tone of a family, which the book refers to as the family atmosphere. It's like the emotional DNA.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects. But what do we do with this information once we uncover it? How do we actually heal from these inherited wounds?
Well, that's where the book gets really practical. It offers a variety of tools and techniques for healing, including what Woolen calls healing sentences. These are affirmations that are designed to reframe our relationship with the past and to offer compassion to ourselves and our ancestors.
Okay, so instead of dwelling on the pain of the past,
Yeah.
we can use these sentences to shift our perspective. So how do these healing sentences work? Are they like positive affirmations people use in meditation?
They're similar to affirmations in that you're consciously choosing to focus on a new, more positive belief. But healing sentences are specifically designed to address the underlying trauma that's been passed down through your family. They acknowledge the pain of the past while empowering you to move forward with greater peace and understanding.
Okay, so can you give me an example of a healing sentence? Let's say I struggle with self-sabotage at work. What kind of sentence could I use?
In that case, you might try something like, even though my ancestors struggled with success, I choose to embrace my potential and allow myself to thrive. Or if you're struggling with a fear of abandonment, you might say, even though they left, I am worthy of love. I am safe now.
Those are really powerful statements. But just saying these sentences,
Yeah.
will that really change anything?
Well, it's not about magically erasing the past. It's about creating new neural pathways in the brain, shifting from a place of fear and limitation to a place of empowerment and possibility. The book emphasizes the importance of not just saying the sentences, but really feeling them and connecting with the emotions behind them.
So we're rewiring our brains for resilience and happiness.
Exactly. And the book actually goes beyond just healing sentences. It also emphasizes the importance of shifting from healing sentences to healing images. Visualizing yourself in a safe and loving environment, surrounded by supportive ancestors, can have a profound impact on your well-being. It's like giving your subconscious a new blueprint, a more positive and empowering vision for your life.
So this is like a whole new way of looking at life then. We're not just individuals, but part of a larger web of interconnectedness.
Yeah, that's exactly what Woolen is getting at. He emphasizes how we're all connected through this intricate tapestry of family history. And by understanding those connections, we can start to unravel the threads that have been holding us back and step into a new level of freedom and self-awareness.
Okay, so we've uncovered our core sentence. We're working on those healing sentences and visualizations. But what about the impact of inherited trauma on our relationships? It seems like a lot of the stories we've been talking about involve these family dynamics
Mm,
and these patterns.
you're right. That's a huge part of it. The book talks about how inherited trauma can actually play out in our romantic relationships, often leading to anxieties, fears of abandonment, and patterns of disconnection.
So we're unconsciously recreating
Yeah.
the dynamics from our family history.
Exactly. Wolin actually outlines 21 invisible dynamics that can affect relationships. It's almost like a cheat sheet for understanding relationship patterns. Things like rejecting a parent, being a parent's confidant, or inheriting a family pattern of failed marriages
Mm.
can create these unconscious obstacles to intimacy.
So it's like we're carrying all this baggage from the past
Yeah.
that we haven't even unpacked.
Yeah, and unpacking that baggage can be transformative
Yeah, definitely.
by recognizing those patterns
Mm.
and making a conscious choice to break free from them. We can create healthier and more fulfilling relationships.
It's interesting, too, how the book explores the connection between inherited trauma
Mm-hmm.
and our relationship with success and failure. It's like some of us are unconsciously programmed for self-sabotage.
Yeah, especially if we've inherited this legacy of hardship or this belief that we don't deserve good things. It's like an invisible hand holding us back. Remember Elizabeth? She was constantly worried about being fired or rejected by her colleagues.
Yes. Her anxieties actually stemmed from early childhood separations from her mother due to hospitalizations.
Mm.
Those feelings of helplessness and fear of abandonment carried over into her adult life,
Okay.
affecting her ability to feel secure at work.
Exactly. And it manifested as this: hypervigilance and constant fear of being found inadequate. It's incredible how these early experiences can have such a lasting impact.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening. I never realized how much our past could be influencing our present. But it's not all doom and gloom, is it? There's hope for healing and breaking free from these patterns, right?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of this book. It doesn't just present the problem, but it actually offers real solutions. We've talked about healing sentences and visualizations,
Yeah.
but there's so much more to explore.
Well, let's keep exploring. I'm ready to delve even deeper into these tools and techniques. What else does Wolin have to offer?
One thing he emphasizes is the importance of acknowledging and integrating the child part of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You see, those early experiences, especially the traumatic ones, can leave these deep imprints on our psyche.
So it's like that inner child is still carrying those wounds from the past.
Exactly, and those wounds can show up in all sorts of ways in our adult lives, from anxieties and relationship problems to those self-sabotaging behaviors.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So how do we then start to heal that inner child?
Well, it begins with recognizing that inner child, offering compassion and reassuring them that they are safe and loved. It's like giving a warm embrace to that younger version of ourselves who might still be hurting.
Yeah, that's a nice image. Does the book offer any specific guidance on how to do that?
It does. Willem provides some really powerful healing sentences that we can say to that inner child. Simple phrases like, I see you, I hear you, you are safe now, or I will protect you.
Those are such simple statements, but I can imagine them being so powerful when they're directed at that part of ourselves.
They really are. It's about nurturing that inner child and offering them the love and support that they may have missed out on.
Yeah, it strikes me that a lot of this work is about shifting our perspective, looking at our experiences through a more compassionate lens.
You're absolutely right. It's about recognizing that our ancestors and even ourselves were doing the best we could with what we had at the time. It's about letting go of blame and judgment and embracing forgiveness and understanding.
And in doing so, we're not just healing ourselves, but we're also breaking that cycle of trauma for future generations.
That's such a crucial point. By addressing our own unresolved issues, we're creating a healthier legacy for our children and our grandchildren. It's like planting seeds of well-being that will blossom for years to come.
I love that analogy. So it's not just about this individual healing, but it's about creating this ripple effect of positive change that extends far beyond us.
Precisely. It's about transforming that pain into wisdom and compassion and creating a brighter future for generations to come.
You know, it also seems like setting healthy boundaries is an important part of this process, especially in families with a history of maybe enmeshment or emotional dependency.
Absolutely. The book talks about the importance of creating those clear lines of separation while still maintaining those loving connections. It's about protecting our own well-being and preventing the transmission of unhealthy patterns.
Right. So it's about creating a safe space for ourselves where we can honor our own needs and our own emotions without feeling obligated to absorb the emotions of others.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming our power and creating a more balanced dynamic. And the book actually provides guidance on how to communicate those boundaries effectively, both verbally and energetically.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. Is there anything else that stood out to you from the book?
You know, I found the section on healing sentences for dealing with estranged or unknown parents to be particularly powerful. This can be such a challenging area for a lot of people, and I think those sentences can be incredibly helpful for releasing resentment and finding peace.
Can you give me an example of one of those sentences?
Sure, one sentence that resonated with me was, "If it made things easier for you to leave or give me away, I understand." Or another one is, "I'll stop blaming you," which I know only holds us both hostage. These are just a few examples, but they illustrate the power of shifting from anger to understanding.
Right. It's about letting go of that need to blame or seek validation and choosing to focus on our own healing journey.
Exactly, and recognizing that our parents were also products of their own experiences, carrying their own burdens and limitations.
It seems like one of the biggest takeaways from this book is that we're not alone in our struggles. A lot of the challenges we face, the fears, the anxieties, the patterns that hold us back, they might actually have roots in our family history.
That's such a powerful realization. And once we understand that, we can approach our healing with greater compassion for both ourselves and those who came before us.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of myself and these unseen forces that have been shaping my life.
It's been a fascinating exploration. And remember, this is just a glimpse into the wealth of information and practical guidance offered in It Didn't Start With You.
If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, we encourage you to dive deeper into this fascinating subject. Read the full book, explore those exercises, and see what insights come up.
It's a valuable resource for anyone who wants to understand themselves better and break free from those limiting patterns.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into inherited family trauma. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep evolving.
And remember, you have the power to heal and create the life you truly desire. So, we've talked about healing sentences and visualizations as ways to address inherited trauma. What are some other techniques Woolen offers in the book?
Yeah, like how else can we kind of put these ideas into practice?
Well, one thing he really emphasizes is the importance of acknowledging and integrating that child part of ourselves. You see, those early experiences, especially those traumatic ones, they can leave these deep imprints on our psyche.
So it's like that inner child is still carrying those wounds from the past.
Exactly. And those wounds can show up in all sorts of ways in our adult lives. We see anxieties, relationship problems, and even those self-sabotaging behaviors.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we start to heal that inner child?
Well, it begins by recognizing that inner child and offering them compassion, reassuring them that they are safe and loved now. It's like giving a warm embrace to that younger version of ourselves, that part of us that might still be hurting.
Oh, that's a beautiful image. Does the book give any specific guidance on how to do that?
It does. Woolen provides some really powerful healing sentences that we can say to that inner child. Simple phrases like, "I see you, I hear you, you are safe now," or "I will protect you."
Those are such simple statements, but I can imagine them being so powerful when you direct them towards that part of yourself.
They really are. It's all about nurturing that inner child and offering them the love and support they may have missed out on.
It strikes me that a lot of this work is about shifting our perspective, like looking at our experiences through a more compassionate lens.
You're right. It's about recognizing that our ancestors and even ourselves were doing the best we could with what we had at the time. It's about letting go of that blame and judgment and embracing forgiveness and understanding.
And in doing so, we're not just healing ourselves,
Yeah.
right? But we're also breaking that cycle of trauma for future generations.
That's such a crucial point. By addressing our own unresolved issues, we're creating a healthier legacy for our children and our grandchildren. It's like planting seeds of well-being that will blossom for years to come.
I love that analogy. So it's not just about this individual healing, but it's about creating this ripple effect that goes beyond us.
Precisely. It's about transforming that pain into wisdom and compassion and creating a brighter future for those generations to come.
Yeah, it also seems like setting healthy boundaries is a really important part of this, especially in families with a history of, maybe enmeshment or emotional dependency.
Absolutely. The book talks about the importance of creating those clear lines of separation while still maintaining those loving connections. It's about protecting our own well-being and preventing the transmission of those unhealthy patterns.
Right, so it's about creating a safe space for ourselves to honor our own needs and our own emotions without feeling obligated to absorb the emotions of others.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming our power and creating a more balanced dynamic. And, the book actually provides guidance on how to communicate those boundaries effectively, both verbally and energetically.
I feel like we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. Is there anything else that really stood out to you from the book?
I found the section on healing sentences for dealing with estranged or unknown parents particularly powerful. I think this is such a challenging area for a lot of people, and I think Those sentences can be incredibly helpful for releasing resentment and finding peace.
Can you give an example of one of those sentences?
Sure, one that resonated with me was, if it made things easier for you to leave or give me away, I understand. Or another one, I'll stop blaming you, which I know only holds us both hostage. These are just a few examples, but I think they really illustrate the power of shifting from anger to understanding.
Right. It's about letting go of that need to blame or seek validation and just choosing to focus on our own healing.
Exactly, and recognizing that our parents were also products of their own experiences, carrying their own burdens and limitations.
It seems like one of the biggest takeaways from this book is that we're not alone in our struggles.
Yeah.
So many of the challenges we face, the fears, the anxieties, the patterns that hold us back, they might actually have roots in our family history.
That's such a powerful realization. And once we understand that, we can approach our healing with a lot more compassion for both ourselves and for those who came before us.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of myself and these unseen forces that have been shaping my life.
It's been a fascinating exploration. And remember, this is just a glimpse into the wealth of information and guidance in It Didn't Start With You.
If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, we highly encourage you to dive deeper into this fascinating subject. Read the full book, explore those exercises, and see what insights come up.
It's a really valuable resource for anyone who's wanting to understand themselves better and break free from those limiting patterns.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for